The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council was the largest meeting hall in the known universe. It floated in the darkness of space, a massive station built by ancient hands, where representatives from 1,000 different species gathered to discuss the fate of worlds. The ceiling rose so high that clouds sometimes formed near the top, and the walls were made of a strange metal that seemed to shift colors depending on who was looking at it. On this particular day, the chamber was full. Beings of every shape and size filled the curved rows of seats that circled the central speaking platform. Some were tall and thin, with skin like polished silver. Others were short and covered in thick fur, their eyes glowing softly in the dim light. There were creatures made of living crystal, beings that floated on cushions of gas, and entities that existed partially in dimensions that human eyes could not perceive. In a small section near the back, reserved for newer species, sat the human delegation. They looked ordinary compared to the exotic beings around them. 5 humans in simple dark suits, their faces calm and composed. They had been members of the Galactic Council for only 40 years, which was less than the blink of an eye, 2 species that measured their histories in millions of years. Ambassador Daniel Carter led the human delegation. He was a man in his late 50s with gray hair and kind eyes that had seen too much of the galaxy's cruelty to remain innocent. Beside him sat Lisa Monroe, his young aide, who was constantly monitoring her datapad for messages from Earth. Behind them stood Commander Nathan Price of the United Earth Defense Fleet, a tall man with broad shoulders and a face that rarely showed emotion. The Velanthi High Speaker, a being made entirely of shifting silver light, called the assembly to order. The Velanthi were ancient beyond measure, and they had served as neutral mediators of the Council since before most species had developed fire. "We gathered today to address territorial claims in the Outer Rim," the High Speaker announced, its voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "The Cathari Dominion has submitted formal requests for systems in Sectors 7 through 12. The Cathari delegation rose from their seats. They were insectoid beings, standing on 4 legs, with 4 arms extending from their thorax. Their exoskeletons were dark green, almost black, and their compound eyes reflected the chamber lights like broken mirrors. Ambassador Vexenar, their leader, spread his arms wide in a gesture of confidence. "The Cathari Dominion claims these systems by right of discovery," Vexenar said, his mandibles clicking as he spoke. "They are empty. They are unclaimed. They belong to whoever is strong enough to take them." Daniel Carter raised his hand, a simple human gesture that the Council had learned to recognize. The High Speaker acknowledged him with a shimmer of light. "If I may," Daniel said, standing slowly. "Several of those systems contain human colony ships. We filed our colonization plans with this Council 8 cycles ago. The systems are not empty. They are ours." Vexenar's compound eyes fixed on the human ambassador. There was something like amusement in his posture, the way his upper arms relaxed while his lower arms tensed. "Human intentions are not human possessions, Ambassador. Your species is young. Perhaps you do not understand how things work in this galaxy. The strong take. The weak accept." Laughter rippled through sections of the chamber. Many of the older species found humans entertaining in the way that adults find children entertaining. They were so earnest, so convinced that rules and agreements meant something. Daniel remained standing, his expression unchanged. "We understand perfectly, Ambassador Vexenar. We simply hoped that the Cathari valued peaceful coexistence." "Peace is for the weak," Vexenar replied. "The Dominion has existed for 10,000 years. We did not survive by being peaceful." The debate continued for another hour, going in circles as diplomatic debates often did. The Cathari insisted on their claims. The humans protested. Other species watched with varying degrees of interest or boredom. Then Lisa Monroe's hand suddenly gripped Daniel's arm. Her face had gone pale, all color draining away in an instant. Her eyes were wide as she stared at her datapad, and her hand was shaking. Daniel leaned close, and she whispered something into his ear. The change in him was immediate and terrifying. His body went rigid, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. Behind him, Commander Price's hand moved toward his sidearm before he caught himself. his jaw tight with barely contained fury. The nearby delegations noticed. Conversations faltered. Heads turned. Something was happening with the humans. Even species that considered them irrelevant could sense that something had changed. Daniel Carter walked forward, moving toward the central speaking platform where only the most important announcements were made. His footsteps echoed in the suddenly quiet chamber. The Valanthia High Speaker flickered with concern, but did not stop him. "High Speaker," Daniel said, and his voice carried to every corner of the vast chamber. It was calm. It's a calm. The kind of calm that comes before a storm. "I must inform this council of an event that occurred 4 hours ago." The chamber was silent. Even the ambient sounds of alien breathing and shifting seemed to fade away. 4 hours ago, a Cathari strike fleet entered the Sol system, our home system. They bypassed our outer defenses using codes that could only have come from diplomatic channels. They achieved orbit around Earth, our homeworld, before our defense forces could respond. Vexenar's exoskeleton rattled. "What are you suggesting, human?" Daniel turned to face him directly. "I am not suggesting anything, Ambassador. I am stating facts. Your fleet began orbital bombardment of civilian population centers at 1432. Earth Standard Time. They targeted cities, schools, hospitals. They did not discriminate between military and civilian targets because they were not interested in military targets." The silence deepened. Several delegations exchanged worried glances. "Current estimates," Daniel continued, his voice never rising above conversational level, "suggest casualties in excess of 200 million human lives." The number hung in the air like a death sentence. 200 million. For species that measured their populations in trillions, it might have seemed small. But for humanity, still young, still growing, still concentrated on a single world, it was devastation beyond imagination. "You attacked our home," Daniel said, looking directly at Vexenar. "You killed our children, our parents, our friends. 200 million souls, Ambassador. And you did it while standing in this chamber speaking of territorial claims as if nothing was happening." Vexenar's mandibles clicked nervously. The Dominion Council did not authorize any such attack. "If rogue elements within our military have acted without permission, your ships bore Dominion markings. They transmitted Dominion codes. They operated in coordination with the territorial claims you made not 1 hour ago." Daniel's gray eyes were cold. "Do not insult this council by pretending ignorance." The Valanthi High Speaker moved forward, its form pulsing with distress. "Ambassador Carter, if what you say is true, this is a violation of the Homeworld Accords. The council will take immediate action too." "The council will do nothing," Daniel interrupted. "The council has never done anything. For 40 years, we watched this body debate while younger species were conquered. We watched claims of aggression get lost in committees. We watched the strong take from the weak while the council talked about procedures and protocols." He turned to face the full assembly, and something in his posture made several species lean back in their seats. "But humanity is done talking. 3 hours ago, I received a message from Earth Command. 3 words. Just 3 words that will change everything. And there was no warmth in it at all. The gloves come off." The silence in the Galactic Council chamber was unlike anything the ancient hall had ever experienced. For 12,000 years, these walls had witnessed declarations of war, the extinction of species, and the rise and fall of empires. But never had the chamber been so completely still. Ambassador Daniel Carter stood at the central platform, his gray eyes sweeping across the assembled representatives. He looked small, standing there, a single human surrounded by beings of immense power and ancient lineage. But there was something about his presence that made size irrelevant. "The gloves come off," the Valanthi High Speaker repeated, its form flickering with confusion. "Ambassador Carter, we do not understand this phrase. What does it mean?" Daniel did not answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his jacket and produced a small device, no larger than his palm. He placed it on the speaking platform, and suddenly the air above it came alive with light. A holographic display spread across the chamber, showing a map of the galaxy. Stars glittered in the darkness, connected by lines representing trade routes and territorial boundaries. Every delegation recognized the map. They had seen it countless times during debates about expansion and territory, but something was different about this map. Small blue dots appeared throughout the display. At first, there were only a few, clustered around the Sol system where humanity made its home. But then more appeared. And more. And more. The blue dots spread across the galaxy like a disease, appearing in sectors that humanity had never claimed, around worlds that belonged to other species. In the dark spaces between stars where no one was supposed to go. "What is this?" demanded High Admiral Torvex of the Morath Federation, his scaled hide rippling with alarm. The Morath were a warrior species, proud of their military strength, and they did not like surprises. "This," Daniel said calmly, "is the current position of the United Earth Defense Fleet. All of it." The chamber erupted in confused murmurs. The Morath ambassador was on his feet. The Arkelian delegation, beings of living crystal, pulsed with agitated light. Even the usually calm Volanthi flickered wildly. "That is impossible," Vexinar stammered, his compound eyes fixed on the display. "Human military capacity is limited. We have monitored their shipyards. They possess perhaps 200 vessels at most." "You monitored what we wanted you to see," Daniel replied. "For 40 years, humanity has been preparing for this day. We hoped it would never come. We prayed that we were wrong about the nature of this galaxy. But we knew, deep in our hearts, that the universe respects only one thing." He paused, letting the word hang in the air. "Strength." Commander Nathan Price stepped forward, his military uniform crisp and formal. "The blue dots you see represent over 15,000 vessels, ranging from patrol craft to dreadnoughts. Each ship is equipped with weapon systems that do not exist in any galactic database. Each crew has been training for combat scenarios against every major power in this chamber." The holographic display shifted, zooming in on Cathari space. The green territory of the Dominion was surrounded by blue dots, their positions forming a perfect sphere around every major Cathari world. The UEN horizon. "Our flagship achieved orbit over the Cathari homeworld approximately 6 minutes ago," Nathan continued. "Admiral Patricia Hayes sends her regards." Vexinar collapsed backward, his forelegs giving out beneath him. Other members of the Cathari delegation rushed to support him, their mandibles clicking in panic. "You would not dare," someone shouted from the upper galleries. "This is a violation of every principle of galactic law. The Council will not permit. The Council permitted the attack on Earth." Daniel interrupted, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. "The Council permitted 200 million of my people to die while you debated territorial claims. The Council has permitted countless atrocities over its 12,000-year history, always finding excuses to look away." He stepped forward. And somehow, the movement silenced the entire chamber. "Let me tell you what I have learned about galactic law. It protects the strong. It ignores the weak. It exists only as long as someone is willing to enforce it. And enforcement only happens when the powerful decide they care." Daniel's voice dropped lower, but somehow it carried even further. "Humanity is done being weak. We are done hoping that rules will protect us. We are done believing that patience and diplomacy will earn us respect." The Valanthi High Speaker moved closer to Daniel, its form solidifying into something almost humanoid. "Ambassador Carter, we understand your anger. The attack on your homeworld was a crime beyond measure. The Council will ensure that justice is served. But surely you do not intend to start a galactic war over this tragedy." "A galactic war?" Daniel laughed, and the sound was bitter. "High Speaker, look at the display. Really look at it." The holographic map expanded, showing the full extent of human ship positions. Blue dots appeared not just in Cathari space, but near the homeworlds of every major power. Near Morath Prime. Near the Arkelian home cluster. Near the Volanthi Drift. "A galactic war would be over in hours," Daniel said. "We have spent 40 years studying every species in this assembly. We know your weaknesses. We know your strengths. We know the locations of your shipyards, your communication networks, your defensive platforms. We have developed countermeasures for every weapon system in your arsenals. Torvex's scales had gone pale. You are bluffing. No species could achieve this level of infiltration without detection. Could they not? Daniel asked. When every other species in this galaxy underestimated them? When they were dismissed as primitives, newcomers, children playing at civilization? We walked among you for 40 years, and you never once thought to look closely at what we were doing. Lisa Monroe stood at the edge of the platform, her datapad still clutched in her hands. Tears streamed down her face, but her voice was steady when she spoke. My sister lived in Singapore. She had 3 children. They were at school when the bombardment began. The building they were in no longer exists. There is nothing left to bury. Her words struck the chamber like physical blows. Every human in this delegation has lost someone today, Lisa continued. Every human on Earth has lost someone. Mothers, fathers, children, friends. 200 million. People who woke up this morning thinking it was an ordinary day. Daniel placed his hand on Lisa's shoulder, a gesture of comfort and solidarity. Then he turned back to face the assembly. We do not want war, he said, and somehow that made his words more terrifying. We want justice. We want every Cathari responsible for this attack delivered to us for trial. We want full reparations for the families of the dead. We want formal recognition of humanity's right to exist without fear of annihilation. He looked around the chamber. Meeting the eyes of every representative he could see, we want the galaxy to understand something very clearly. The next species that attacks humanity's home, the next power that decides we are too weak to defend ourselves, the next fool who believes they can murder our people without consequence, they will not receive the courtesy of a warning. The Valanthe High Speaker's form had dimmed to barely a glow. Ambassador Carter. Daniel. If you launch attacks against the Cathari homeworld, you will become no better than they are. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed, and some of the terrible intensity drained from his expression. You are right, High Speaker, and that is why our ships have not fired a single shot. They achieved orbit. They demonstrated our capability, but they have not attacked. Not yet. He stepped back from the central platform. Humanity will give the Council one standard cycle to respond to our demands. Justice for the dead. Reparations for the survivors. Recognition of our rights. If these demands are met, our ships will stand down. We will return to peaceful relations with the galaxy. His eyes found Vexenar, who was still being supported by his delegation members. But if they are not met, then the galaxy will learn that there are worse things than war. There is extinction, and humanity has the power to deliver it. Daniel Carter turned and walked back to his delegation, leaving the chamber in stunned silence behind him. The emergency meeting took place in a private chamber far from the main assembly hall. The room was small by galactic standards, designed to hold only a few dozen beings, and the walls were lined with technology that prevented any form of surveillance or recording. 7 species had been invited. The great powers, they called themselves, the ancient civilizations that had shaped the galaxy for millions of years. The Valanthe were there, their silver forms dimmed with worry. The Morath Federation had sent High Admiral Torvex himself, his warrior's instincts on full alert. The Arkelian Collective was represented by a being whose name translated roughly as Mountain Gnat Speaks, a massive entity of living crystal, whose age was measured in geological epochs. And at the far end of the table sat the human delegation. Just 3 of them now, Daniel Carter, Lisa Monroe, and Commander Nathan Price. They looked impossibly small compared to the beings around them. But no one in the room was foolish enough to underestimate them anymore. We demand an explanation, Torvex growled, his scaled hide rippling with barely contained aggression. How did your species construct a fleet of this magnitude without detection? Our intelligence networks are the finest in the galaxy. Daniel leaned back in his chair, his expression calm. Your intelligence networks saw what we wanted them to see. Fake shipyards producing fake ships. False reports filed by human assets in your own governments. Misinformation spread through diplomatic channels you thought were secure. But the resources alone, Mountain That Speaks rumbled, their crystalline form vibrating with confusion. The materials required to build 15,000 warships would have stripped your home system bare. We did not build our fleet in the Sol system, Nathan Price replied. We built it in the Dead Zone. Every being in the room went still. The Dead Zone was a region of space that no species entered. It was a graveyard, a place where ancient ruins drifted in the darkness. The remnants of civilizations that had existed long before any current species had evolved. The radiation levels there were lethal. The gravitational anomalies were unpredictable. Ships that entered rarely returned. You are lying, Torvek said, but his voice lacked conviction. Daniel shook his head slowly. 38 years ago, one of our early exploration vessels stumbled into the Dead Zone by accident. Its crew should have died. The radiation alone should have destroyed them in minutes, but they found something instead, something that changed everything. He gestured to Lisa, who produced a small device and placed it on the table. A holographic image appeared, showing a structure unlike anything in galactic records. It was massive, larger than most space stations, and its design was both beautiful and alien. Curves flowed into sharp angles. Light seemed to bend around its surface in ways that defied physics. The precursors, the Valenthi High Speaker whispered, the precursors were a legend. A myth passed down through countless generations of countless species. They were supposedly the first intelligent beings in the galaxy. The creators who had seeded life across the stars billions of years ago, but they had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only whispers and stories until now. This structure was a library, Daniel explained. A repository of knowledge left behind by beings who existed before any of your species crawled out of your primordial oceans. It took us years to learn how to access it, more years to translate what we found. But when we finally understood what the precursors had left for us, we realized why they had hidden it so carefully. The holographic display changed, showing something that made several of the great powers' representatives recoil. It was a map of the galaxy, but not as it currently existed. This map showed darkness spreading from the outer rim, consuming star systems, leaving nothing behind but dead worlds and empty space. The precursors did not vanish, Daniel continued. They were destroyed by something that exists beyond the galactic rim, something that returns every 50,000 years to harvest intelligent life. This is impossible, Torvek snarled. We would have detected such a threat. Our long-range sensors extend to the edge of the galaxy. Your sensors see what they are designed to see. The threat I am describing operates on principles that your technology cannot detect. The precursors were more advanced than any species currently alive, and even they could not stop what was coming. They could only prepare. Mountain That Speaks leaned forward, their crystalline form pulsing with urgent light. Prepare how? They left their technology behind. Hidden in places like the Dead Zone, waiting for species who might be worthy to inherit it. There were tests, challenges, safeguards, to ensure that only those who truly deserved the knowledge would gain access. Daniel's voice grew quiet. Humanity passed those tests. We gained access to precursor technology, precursor weapons, precursor knowledge, and we used it to build our hidden fleet, preparing for the day when we would need to defend ourselves. The Valenthi High Speaker's form flickered rapidly. Why did you not share this information with the Council? We could have prepared together. We could have what? Daniel interrupted. Debated for centuries while the threat drew closer, argued over who should control the technology, used it to conquer each other instead of preparing for a common enemy. He stood, walking to the holographic display. We watched this council for 40 years. We saw how the strong exploited the weak. We saw how treaties were broken when convenient. We saw how species like the Cathari were allowed to threaten and bully anyone they considered beneath them. His hand passed through the holographic image of the oncoming darkness. We knew that if we revealed what we had found, this council would demand we share it. And we knew that the species who would gain the most from precursor technology would be exactly the kind of species we could not trust with such power. So you armed yourselves in secret, Torvek said slowly, built your fleet, waited for someone to give you an excuse. We prepared to defend ourselves. Daniel corrected, and to defend the galaxy. When the time came, we had hoped to reveal ourselves gradually, to build alliances with species who shared our values. The Cathari attack forced our hand. The room was silent as the representatives processed this information. The implications were staggering. Humanity was not just a young species with hidden military strength. They were the inheritors of the precursors, holders of technology that could reshape the galaxy. The Valenthi High Speaker spoke first. Ambassador Carter, the Council owes humanity a profound apology. We failed to protect your homeworld. We failed to see the threat the Cathari posed. We failed in our most basic duty as guardians of galactic peace. Apologies do not bring back the dead, Nathan Price said coldly. No, they do not. The Valanthi's form solidified, taking on a more defined shape than usual. But perhaps action can begin to make amends. The Valanthi Concordat formally moves that the Cathari Dominion be expelled from the Galactic Council. We further move that their leaders be remanded to human custody for trial. The Arkelian Collective seconds this motion. Mountain That Speaks rumbled. The Morath Federation thirds it, Torvex added, his voice heavy with something that might have been shame. One by one, the great powers voiced their support. The Cathari, who had sent a single representative to observe the emergency meeting, slowly rose from his seat. The Dominion accepts responsibility for its actions, the representative said, his voice hollow with defeat. We will cooperate with all demands. We ask only that our civilian population be spared. Daniel studied the Cathari for a long moment. Then, to the surprise of everyone present, his expression softened. Humanity does not wage war on civilians, he said. We never have. That is not who we are. The guilty will face justice. The innocent will be protected. That is the difference between humanity and those who attacked us. He turned to face the assembled great powers. But understand this. The precursor warning is real. The threat is coming. In approximately 300 years, the darkness will return, and it will not care about borders or treaties or ancient grudges. It will try to consume everything. Daniel Carter looked around the room, meeting the eyes of each representative in turn. The question is not whether humanity will share our knowledge. We will, because we must, because the alternative is extinction for all of us. The question is whether you will stand with us when the time comes. Whether you will set aside 10,000 years of rivalry and suspicion and learn to fight as one, because humanity cannot save the galaxy alone. We need allies. We need partners. We need species who understand that there are things more important than territory and power. The Valanthi High Speaker moved forward, their form brightening with hope. Then let us begin, today. Let us build the alliance that will save us all. Daniel nodded slowly. Today, we begin. 1 month had passed since the attack on Earth, and the galaxy had become a different place. The Cathari Dominion had collapsed almost overnight. Their military had surrendered without resistance, once they understood the true scope of human power. Their leaders had been arrested, taken into custody by human forces who treated them with a cold professionalism that somehow seemed more frightening than anger would have been. 16 admirals and 47 political officials now sat in cells on a human station, awaiting trial for crimes against humanity. On Earth itself, the reconstruction had already begun. The cities that had been destroyed were being rebuilt with new technology, structures that rose from the ashes stronger and more beautiful than before. Memorial sites were planned for every location where people had died. The names of 200 million souls were being collected, cataloged, and preserved in databases that would last for eternity, Ambassador. Daniel Carter stood on the observation deck of Unity Station, humanity's new diplomatic headquarters positioned at the edge of the Sol system. The station was massive, large enough to house representatives from 100 different species. Its design incorporated both human architecture and precursor technology. Through the transparent walls, Daniel could see ships from dozens of species docked at the station's ports. Lisa Monroe approached with 2 cups of coffee, handing one to her mentor. She had changed in the weeks since the attack. There were lines around her eyes that had not been there before, and a hardness in her expression that spoke of grief transformed into purpose. The Valanthi delegation has arrived, she said. They are requesting a private meeting. Daniel took a sip of his coffee, staring out at the stars. They want to discuss the alliance. They want more than that. Lisa pulled up information on her datapad. Preliminary reports suggest they are prepared to offer full military integration with human forces. They want access to precursor technology in exchange for complete cooperation. Everyone wants access to precursor technology. Daniel turned from the window. The question is whether anyone deserves it. The meeting took place in a chamber decorated in a style that blended human and Valanthi design. Soft lighting, mixed with shifting patterns of color. The furniture had been designed to accommodate beings of different shapes and sizes. It was a room built for diplomacy, for the careful dance of negotiation between species. The Valanthi. High Speaker waited with two other members of their species, their forms shimmering with patterns that Daniel had learned to read as eagerness mixed with anxiety. They wanted something badly, and they were afraid he would refuse. Ambassador Carter, the High Speaker said, rising to greet him. Thank you for receiving us, High Speaker. Daniel took his seat, Lisa settling beside him. What can humanity do for the Valanthi Concordat? We wish to propose the formation of a new galactic alliance, one that will prepare for the threat you have described. The High Speaker's form pulsed with earnest light. The Valanthi have served as neutral mediators for 12,000 years. We have never taken sides, never engaged in military action, never favored one species over another. But the precursor warning changes everything. Daniel nodded slowly. You are offering to abandon your neutrality. We are offering to lead. Together with humanity. The High Speaker moved closer, their forms solidifying with intensity. A coalition of species committed to mutual defense, shared technology, and preparation for the darkness that is coming. The Valanthi will bring our diplomatic expertise, our ancient wisdom, our connections with every species in the galaxy. And humanity will bring the weapons that can actually protect everyone, Daniel finished. Yes, Daniel was quiet for a long moment, considering. Through the window of the meeting chamber, he could see the distant blue dot of Earth, still visible even from this distance. His homeworld, the place where his daughter and grandchildren had lived. High Speaker, he said finally, 6 weeks ago. My granddaughter was killed when a Cathari plasma strike hit her school. She was 9 years old. Her name was Sophie, and she wanted to be an artist. She used to draw pictures of alien species she saw in the news. She thought they were beautiful. The Valanthi's form dimmed with grief. Ambassador, I tell you this, not to gain sympathy, but to explain something about humanity that I do not think the galaxy understands. Daniel leaned forward. We are not a species that heals quickly. The wounds of this attack will take generations to fade. Many of my people want revenge, not alliance. They want the galaxy to suffer for what was done to us. And yet you advocate for cooperation, because Sophie would have wanted that. Daniel's voice caught slightly. The first crack in his composure since the attack. She could not wait until she was old enough to travel to other worlds. She wanted to see the wonders of the galaxy with her own eyes. She believed that humans and aliens could be friends. He stood, walking to the window that looked out over the stars. Humanity will share the precursor knowledge. Not because we trust you. Not because we have forgiven the galaxy for failing to protect us. But because when the darkness comes, it will not care about species or borders or old grudges. It will try to destroy everything. And Sophie would never have forgiven me if I let that happen when I had the power to prevent it. The High Speaker rose, their form brightening with hope and relief. Then we are agreed? Daniel turned back, his expression solemn. We are agreed. But understand this clearly. Humanity's memory is long. We will work alongside you, share our knowledge, fight beside you when the time comes. But we will also be watching. Every species in this coalition will be held accountable for their actions. There will be no more attacks on homeworlds. No more genocide of younger races. No more exploitation of the weak by the strong. And if a species violates these terms, Daniel's smile held no warmth. Then they will discover that the fleet we revealed was only a fraction of what we truly possess. The High Speaker accepted this condition without protest. Perhaps they understood that it was fair, given what humanity had suffered. Perhaps they simply recognized that they had no choice. Over the following weeks, the coalition of united species began to take shape. The Valanthi provided their diplomatic networks, reaching out to species across the galaxy. The Morath contributed their military expertise, sharing tactical knowledge that their warriors had developed over millions of years. The Arkellians offered their vast computational capabilities, their crystalline minds capable of processing information at speeds no organic being could match, and humanity shared the precursor knowledge. Carefully, slowly, with extensive safeguards and verification protocols, technology that could reshape stars, weapons that could crack planets, defenses that could withstand anything the galaxy had ever seen. Daniel oversaw it all. Traveling from station to station, from world to world, building alliances that would have seemed impossible just months before. He met with species who had dismissed humanity as irrelevant. He negotiated with powers who had secretly planned to conquer Earth. He shook hands and touched tentacles and exchanged diplomatic formalities with beings of every description, and always, in the back of his mind, he remembered Sophie's drawings. Childish pictures of alien beings, rendered in bright colors with a 9-year-old's innocent joy. She had seen beauty in creatures that most humans found frightening. She had believed that the galaxy could be a place of wonder instead of fear. On the anniversary of the attack, Daniel stood alone in a memorial garden on Earth. A simple cherry tree grew at the center of the garden, its pink blossoms falling softly in the spring breeze. A small plaque at its base bore a simple inscription: Sophie Carter, age 9 artist. Lisa found him there as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. "The Coalition Summit begins tomorrow," she said quietly. "Representatives from over 100 species. They are calling it the largest gathering in galactic history." Daniel nodded without looking up. "Tell them I will be there? Are you all right?" He was silent for a long moment. Then he reached out and touched the cherry tree's trunk, feeling the rough bark beneath his fingers. "I miss her," he said simply. "Every day I miss her. But I also know that she would be proud of what we are building. A galaxy where children can dream of visiting other worlds without fearing that those worlds will destroy them." Lisa placed her hand on his shoulder. "Then let us make sure we build it right." Daniel finally turned from the tree, his expression resolute. "Yes, let us do that." 5 years had passed since the attack on Earth, and the galaxy had transformed beyond recognition. The coalition of united species had grown to include over 200 member races, bound together by treaties that emphasized mutual defense, technological cooperation, and strict rules against aggression. The precursor warning had been shared with all members, and the knowledge of what was coming had changed everything. Old rivalries that had burned for millions of years suddenly seemed pointless. Territorial disputes that had sparked countless wars were quietly resolved. In the face of extinction, the galaxy had finally learned to work together. Earth itself had been reborn. The cities that had been destroyed now stood taller and more beautiful than before, their architecture blending human creativity with precursor technology. New structures rose from the ashes, buildings that could withstand orbital bombardment, that could generate their own power, that could heal their own damage. The planet had become a symbol of resilience, proof that even the worst tragedy could be overcome. The Unity Assembly Building stood in New Geneva, a massive structure of glass and steel and crystal that served as the headquarters of the coalition. Its design had been a collaborative effort, incorporating elements from dozens of species, and the result was something that belonged to no single culture yet honored all of them. The Great Hall at its center could hold representatives from every member species, and on this particular day, it was full. Secretary General Daniel Carter stood at the central podium, looking out over the largest gathering of intelligent life in galactic history. His hair had gone completely white in the years since the attack, and lines marked his face that had not been there before. But his eyes were still sharp, still filled with the quiet determination that had carried him through the darkest days. Beside him stood Admiral Nathan Price, now commander of the Combined Fleet, his uniform bearing insignia from 20 different species, and Lisa Monroe, who had become humanity's most respected ambassador. her diplomatic skills having helped forge alliances that once seemed impossible. "My friends," Daniel began, his voice carrying across the assembly and broadcasting to billions of beings throughout known space. "5 years ago, humanity suffered a tragedy that nearly broke us. We lost loved ones. We lost cities. We lost our innocence about the nature of the galaxy we had so eagerly joined." He paused, letting the weight of those words settle over the assembly. "But we also gained something. We gained clarity. We gained purpose. And perhaps most importantly, we gained allies we never expected." The crowd stirred with murmurs of agreement. Representatives from species that had been at war for millions of years sat side by side, their old hatreds forgotten in the face of a common threat. "The species that attacked us believed humanity was weak," Daniel continued. "They believed we could be pushed aside, our worlds claimed, our people killed without consequence. They were wrong. But they were also wrong about something more fundamental. They believed that strength was measured only in ships and weapons. They believed that power came from domination and fear." He gestured to the diverse assembly before him. "Look around you. Volanthi and Marath sitting together. Archelians sharing knowledge with species they once considered primitive. Former enemies, now standing as friends. This is what humanity has always believed, even when we doubted ourselves, that cooperation is stronger than conflict, that unity is more powerful than division, that the whole can be greater than the sum of its parts." Lisa stepped forward to stand beside her mentor. "The threat that destroyed the precursors will return. We cannot stop it from coming. We cannot hide from it. We can only prepare to face it together." Nathan Price spoke next, his military bearing lending weight to his words. "The combined fleet now numbers over 1 million vessels, crewed by soldiers from every coalition species. We train together. We learn from each other. We develop tactics and strategies that combine the best of every military tradition in the galaxy. And when the darkness comes, we will stand together to face it." Daniel nodded, taking the podium once more. "I have been asked many times what drives humanity. Why we fought back when surrender might have been easier. Why we shared our secrets when keeping them would have made us more powerful. Why we chose to forgive species that had wronged us, to build alliances instead of seeking revenge." He looked out at the faces before him, human and alien alike. "The answer is simple. We did it because it was right. Not because it was easy, not because it was strategic, not because it served our interests. We did it because somewhere out there, a 9-year-old girl once dreamed of seeing the wonders of the galaxy. Because 200 million souls deserved better than to die in vain. Because humanity refuses to become the monsters that others feared we might be." His voice dropped lower, but somehow it carried even further. "We did it because when the universe tried to teach us that only strength matters, we chose to believe otherwise. We chose to believe that kindness is not weakness, that mercy is not foolishness, that the measure of a species is not how many enemies it can destroy, but how many friends it can make." Daniel smiled, and this time there was warmth in it. "The galaxy tried to break us. Instead, it made us stronger. But not just us. It made all of us stronger. Every species that joined this coalition, every world that chose cooperation over conflict, every being that decided to trust instead of fear. Together, we have built something that the precursors never achieved. A unified galaxy, prepared to face whatever challenges await us." He raised his hand in the traditional human gesture of greeting, a simple wave that had become a symbol of friendship across coalition space. "This is not the end of our story. It is only the beginning. The darkness is coming, but so is the dawn. And I believe with all my heart that when the threat arrives, it will find not a collection of frightened species fighting among themselves, but a civilization united and ready." The assembly erupted in applause, a sound that transcended species and culture. Beings who had never learned to clap found other ways to express their approval. The Volanthi flickered with brilliant patterns of light. The Moraths stomped their feet in rhythmic celebration. The Archelians resonated with harmonics that vibrated through the very walls. Daniel stepped back from the podium, allowing the moment to wash over him. 5 years of work, of grief, of rebuilding, all leading to this: a galaxy united, a future secured, a dream made real. Nathan Price leaned close, his voice barely audible above the noise. "Do you think she would be proud, Sophie?" Daniel did not answer immediately. He looked out at the celebration, at beings of every description cheering together, at the beginning of a new era for all intelligent life. "I think she would be amazed," he finally said. "I think she would want to draw pictures of every single one of them." Lisa wiped a tear from her eye. "Then we should make sure there are plenty of new wonders for her to see, even if she can only see them through us." Daniel nodded slowly. "Yes, that is exactly what we should do." Later that evening, when the celebrations had quieted and the delegations had returned to their quarters, Daniel stood alone on a balcony overlooking the city. The lights of New Geneva sparkled in the darkness, a reminder of how far humanity had come from the scared young species that had first ventured into the stars above him. The night sky was full of stars. Somewhere out there, coalition ships patrolled the borders of known space. Somewhere out there, scientists were developing new technologies to defend against the coming threat. Somewhere out there, the darkness waited, patient and eternal. But also, somewhere out there, children were going to sleep dreaming of the wonders they would see. Artists were creating new works that blended human and alien traditions. Explorers were mapping new worlds, finding new mysteries, pushing the boundaries of what was known. The galaxy had tried to break humanity. Instead, humanity had changed the galaxy, and in a memorial garden on Earth, where a cherry tree grew above a small plaque, the wind stirred the blossoms in what might have been approval. The story of humanity and the stars was only beginning.